a felony and disorderly conduct on the Greyhound bus that was traveling from Milwaukee to Chicago with nearly 40 people on board. Police say the 33-year-old got into an argument and then made threats against passengers. The sheriff says Vargas Rosas is in the United States illegally and had been previously deported to Mexico back in 2012. The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol confirms with Fox News that Vargas Rosas was detained 5 times and deported 5 times previously to this incident. At around 9:40 p.m. on Friday, passengers on the Greyhound bus began calling police, saying the suspect was pacing back and forth in the aisle, threatening to kill people, and appeared to draw what passengers thought was a gun from his waistband.
He was just acting crazy. I don't know if he just wasn't, if he was intoxicated or what he was, but he just started making threats to everybody. And it almost felt like a terrorist situation because you're on a bus, and a guy saying he's got a gun.
Police chased the bus but had to forcefully stop it on Interstate 94 in Illinois using spike strips to flatten the tires because the bus driver would not pull over. Passengers say they could not understand why the bus driver refused to pull over as police chased them.
He thought that our deputies were trying to stop someone else. I know it sounds rather hard to wrap our mind around. How do you not know you're being pulled over? I think he ultimately recognized that this was a serious event when we spiked his tires. His tires became flat, at least 2 of them did, and he rolled into the state of Illinois where he finally came to arrest. But he had no idea what was happening in the very far back of the bus.
Wow. None of the 40 passengers were injured. Police say Vargas Rosas implied he had a gun, but no gun was found. But again, Eric, deported 5 times previously to this incident.
Yeah, we've heard about these type of cases before. Brian, thanks so much.
Of course.
Arthel?
More reaction from President Trump amid DACA negotiations with lawmakers. What the president is now saying about Democrats and their efforts to protect immigrants brought to the U.S. as children.
No fear! Immigrants are welcome!
Mark Wahlberg making a big move in recognition of a reported pay gap.
Well, the actor announcing that he's donating his entire $1.5 million salary from the reshoots of the film All the Money in the World to the Time's Up legal fund for victims of sexual abuse and harassment. This comes after reports that say his co-star Michelle Williams, she was only paid the union per diem of $1,000. She, of course, thanking Mark Wahlberg for his act.
1.5.
Wow.
1,000. 1.5 million, 1,000. Wrong.
All right.
See you.
A day after Hawaiians are jolted by a false alarm about an incoming ballistic missile, the governor in that state apologizes for the pain and confusion.
It was fear, just fear of I wasn't with my kids, I was going to die, my kids could die, what was I going to do?
We'll go live on the ground in Honolulu with the very latest.
Plus, brand new tweets from President Trump, including his claim that, quote, Democrats don't really want a deal on DACA. What does all this mean for immigration reform?
And we'll talk to a group that's raising millions of dollars to help make sure our nation's veterans are getting the help they need when they're ready to make the transition from service to civilian life. Welcome to America's News Headquarters. Live from Washington, I'm Jillian Turner.
And I'm Mike Emanuel.
Great to be with you, Mike.
Hawaiian lawmakers are calling yesterday's emergency missile alert error unacceptable. Today, Democratic Congressman Tulsi Gabbard also called on President Trump to directly negotiate with North Korea and build a path to denuclearization. Will Carr is in Honolulu with details. Hi, Will.
And Mike, local residents this morning still trying to figure out exactly how this could happen. A real head scratcher after they had a terrifying Saturday morning when so many people received that text alert which read, ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii, seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. That sparked panic, residents believing that North Korea had fired a missile. From end to end, it would only take about 30 minutes to hit Hawaii. And when local residents didn't immediately receive another text alert, many people thought they were going to die. They raced to shelters, tried to call family members, and held their loved ones for what they thought might be their last moments.
This is not a drill. If you are indoors, stay indoors. If you are outdoors, seek immediate shelter in a building.
People just started scurrying around trying to get into bathrooms. And I was with my two little girls who are 8 and 10. So kids are crying and nobody really knew what to do.
Mistake from Hawaii officials this morning, which is why we're out here. We're covering everything
Turns out it was all a false alarm. The text alert, according to the director of the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency, sent by an employee who hit the wrong button during a shift change. Evidently, that led to a string of events that did not let them to send a follow-up text alert for 38 minutes. Now, this is especially concerning since authorities have been telling residents in Hawaii to prepare for a potential attack, however unlikely, since rhetoric has ratcheted up between the United States and North Korea.
I've been talking about the seriousness of this threat for years, since I came here to Congress, and I've been calling on President Trump to directly negotiate with North Korea, to sit across the table from Kim Jong-un, work out the differences so that we can build a pathway towards denuclearization, to remove this threat.
And this morning, there's a bit of a lighter take on this in the local paper. You can see it says oops, and you can see the finger on the button there. But Mike, I can tell you that 24 hours ago, this was a terrifying moment for this community.
Yeah, that's right. No one was laughing at that point. Will Carr live in Honolulu. Will, many thanks. Jillian?
Here with more on this is Fox News senior strategic analyst, General Jack Keane. General, thanks for joining us again. Excited to have you as always. So yesterday, we faced a real, not just Hawaii, but to a certain extent, the entire nation faced a real test of national defense, of the national defense system. Did the government fail us yesterday?
Yeah, pretty much so. I mean, so our viewers can understand, the American military is responsible to detect a launch. And that actually happens almost instantaneously, Jillian. We have satellites and sensors all around the world. Mm-hmm. And clearly, given the problem we have with North Korea, we have obviously a focus there. So as soon as a missile is leaving the launch pad, we have an alert. And it comes into our military command center, Strategic Command, and also the North American Aerospace Defense Command. They get that alert. And then the military begins to track the launch.
In this case, Pacific Command, right?
No, the same commands I'm talking to you. Oh. And then based on the track of the launch, they will make a judgment as to whether our allies, in this case Hawaii or the continental United States, is in danger. And then they will bring in the other commands and notify them of what is taking place. Now, we're just talking about a matter of minutes here.
Okay.
Seconds, instant, the launch is made, we know it. And then very quickly we make a judgment about whether we're being threatened or not, and then notify the appropriate command. And it's that command that would marry up with local state emergency management centers. In this case, of course, there was no launch. And that emergency management center acted on their own without a military command advising them that they have detected a launch, not only detected a launch, but it's a threat to them.
So in your estimation, based on what we know so far, it's sort of that disconnect that you think is responsible for this, meaning it's not necessarily the federal government level that failed us or one of the military commands. It's more at the state and local level.
Yes, it is. I mean, the Emergency Management Center in Hawaii, they know full well that they should not be providing an alert to their citizens without the military command advising them that such a thing actually exists. And it's actually threatening to the people in Hawaii. And that did not happen. But nonetheless, as everybody's been reporting, they made a mistake. I mean, the two fatal mistakes they made, obviously, is the initial notification, but then 38 minutes to retrieve it is also as unacceptable. In Hawaii, they have a system, the rest of the country doesn't have as robust a system as they have, because they had to deal with World War II, and they had a siren alert system.
Which we recognize. I think, even folks from my generation, we recognize that sound. It's a little bit chilling to hear those alarms going.
They have an alert siren for 1 minute that tells you, as the word implies, something's happening.
We're seeing that right now, on the screen. Viewers can take a listen to that.
Then they have a wailing sound that comes the next time, and it's more of a screeching sound which says, seek shelter. And then they use emergency messaging center, where they use broadcast means, television, radio, and also emails and
text. We're hearing
and
out of
text,
this,
just
yeah.
like Amber Alert system,
Right.
and hits on billboards and everything.
Okay, so I don't want to have you here without getting a little bit into the strategic picture here.
Sure.
So the obvious threat America faces in that theater is from North Korea, right? I mean, there's no other country. China's not, threatening to launch missiles at us.
No.
Japan, South Korea, the obvious threat comes from North Korea, right? We're not jumping to any conclusions by pointing that out. People were not out of bounds for thinking that. If this was a real missile, it's likely that it would have originated from North Korea, right?
Yeah. Well, he's rapidly developing the capabilities. He put it on fast forward by comparison to his grandfather and his father, and he is threatening the use of those nuclearized ICBMs as well. So we have no choice, as our president is, and entire national security apparatus is taking this threat very seriously. And as Director Pompeo has said to us, as recently as just 2 weeks ago on Chris Wallace's show on Fox Sunday, he said we're just months away from North Korea having this capability. So it's quite intimidating what's taking place, certainly.
I would say. It is somewhere on the spectrum between intimidating to horrifying is where I think we stand today. General Keane, thank you so much for joining us,
Great talking to you,
laying that out for us. We appreciate it.
President Trump claiming fake news over a Wall Street Journal interview released earlier this week, all over the use of one word. The president and White House staff say Mr. Trump was misquoted on his relationship with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. Phil Keating is in West Palm Beach, Florida, near the Winter White House at Mar-a-Lago with more. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Mike. 3 days after that widely reported Wall Street Journal quote of the president, where the president allegedly said, "I have a good relationship with Kim Jong-un." This morning, the president, followed by the White House press office, hitting the Wall Street Journal back, saying that was not accurate, that the president didn't say "I have," but "I'd have," as in hypothetical, a big difference. And listening to some audio tape of the interview released by the White House this morning, it does appear in this case the president is spot on. Meanwhile, President Trump should be wrapping up soon his presumed golf game nearby down the street at Trump International Golf Club. He did golf there yesterday, with whom we still don't know, but the president was at the golf club when suddenly Hawaii's false alarm went out Saturday about an incoming ballistic missile, sparking 38 minutes of terror amid reports that the White House was scrambling. Homeland Security Secretary Nielsen defended it on Fox News Sunday.
When we look at response, we all act under something called the National Response Framework. We test that very frequently. We use different scenarios. We did have what's called a Deputies Committee, so that's the Deputy Secretaries of the Department, exercise in December specific to this threat, and we had already planned to have a principal cabinet-level exercise, if you will, early next month.
Secretary Nielsen also says she doesn't recall hearing President Trump say that exact phrase, that being the widely reported disparaging, if not racist, comment Thursday, referring to Haiti and some countries in Africa as, quote, S-hole countries. After multiple immigration talks last week that's still dogging the administration for the fourth day now, that meeting was about temporary protected status for immigrants and to discuss what to do about the 700,000 dreamers in limbo. Now, here's a tweet the president sent this morning, quote, "DACA is probably dead because the Democrats don't really want it. They just want to talk and take desperately needed money away from our military." The president has no public events scheduled for today. He is expected with his family, First Lady Melania and son Barron, to return on Air Force One to D.C. sometime tomorrow afternoon. And then it will be a 4-day work week for Congress and the president. We'll see if those DACA talks can be resurrected or if, in fact, the president's tweet is also on the money. Mike?
Yeah, looking ahead to a critical week. Phil Keating live in West Palm. Phil, thanks a lot.
For more on the debate over DACA and immigration reform. Molly Hennenberg joins us now with the latest details. Molly?
Hi, Jillian. DACA, that's the program to prevent illegal minors from being deported, and it's vexing members of Congress right now. The Trump administration plans to shut it down in March unless legislators send him a bill making it a law. So lawmakers are trying to figure out if they let it end, or if they put it in a standalone bill, or if they wrap up some type of DACA and immigration reform in a bill to fund the government. Democrats say DACA first.
What we're dealing with right now are children who were brought here as children through a very young age, no fault of their own. That's what we can address.
I, for one, will not vote for government funding until we get a deal on DACA.
President Trump, as you just saw Phil Keating talk about, he tweeted this morning that, quote, DACA is probably dead because the Democrats don't really want it. They just want to talk and take desperately needed money away from our military, meaning not fund the government in that bill that has to be done by Friday. Republicans say bring out a solution for the 800,000 illegal minors, but want to do it as part of a comprehensive immigration legislation.
Republicans and Democrats want to solve the DACA situation, but we also want to make sure that we're not back here in 5 years doing the same thing again. What we have to do is secure our borders, George. This is a serious issue.
Along with a border wall, Senator Perdue says he also wants to fix chain migration and move toward more of a merit-based immigration system. Jillian?
Molly Hennenberg, thanks for that reporting.
Now let's bring in Jesse Burns, associate editor with the Hill newspaper. Jesse, good to see you. Thanks for coming in. So here we are, the government due to run out of money Friday night. Here's the White House approach to this issue. Let's take a listen.
Well, our plan is to oppose it and go to the American people and say the Democrats need to work with us to fund our national security, to fund our intelligence systems, to make sure that our military is prepared in case of any kind of emergency. I think going to the American people and making the case that Democrats are being very irresponsible, that they're shutting down the government, that they're doing the kinds of things that they pledged not to do only a few years ago will be effective.
Jesse, what's your assessment of that strategy?
You know, right now, Democrats, their only leverage is to try to get DACA in these funding talks. And so when that runs out on Friday, they're not under the gun, in their view, Republicans, to actually get this done. They're going to drag it out. They have until March 5th, in Democrats' eyes, to get it done. So they're pushing for this week to get it done in those 4 days to hammer out some type of deal. Trump said on Tuesday that he would sign any immigration bill that was sent to him. Of course, ever since then, we've seen a lot of controversy over comments in the Oval Office and subsequent tweets from him pumping the brakes, saying, look, maybe we don't have a deal yet.
Democrats are also facing questions like Senator Michael Bennet, Democrat of Colorado, with Chuck Todd today, who's being asked like whether Democrats benefit from a government shutdown. Take a listen to this.
It should not come to that. We should stop shutting this government down. Okay. And we should start doing the work the American people sent us to Washington to do. Chuck, we have not passed a real budget for the 10 years that I've been in the Senate.
So the Democrats blink in this shutdown showdown.
Yeah, you know, look, I think since August or September, we've had 4 of these continuing resolutions to the stopgap measures to try to fund the government. Obviously, both parties realize that no one benefits politically if there's a shutdown. And of course, you have millions of people who are affected as well in the government that will eventually get paid when funding does come through. But politically, it's ever since the shutdown in over Obamacare, that's something that neither party wants. And so, you know, we'll see how far it comes. The last time we had a continuing resolution about a month ago, they got it done a couple of days in advance of the deadline, so it might not run through Friday night, but maybe.
And of course, President Trump set a March 5th deadline for lawmakers to figure out the DACA issues. So does his argument this week become, hey, you guys have more time, this is not the crisis of the moment?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of drawing a box, right? He's trying to say, I want this to happen. Here's a deadline, but I don't want to make any kind of concessions right now. You know, that kind of tweet saying that Democrats don't want DACA. Obviously, Democrats want DACA. So they're going to be pushing for that very aggressively this week. But it's a matter of, you know, do they get those kind of concessions that they want? You know, there's some that are pushing for, you know, the DREAM Act. They're trying to get even more done and more concessions. And what we saw with the controversy in the Oval Office this week, those reported comments from President Trump, that only gives air to that effort.
Speaking of that uproar over alleged colorful language, does that make it harder to get things done this week?
It definitely makes things, it's a headache for Speaker Ryan. It's a headache for GOP leadership. They're trying to hammer out, the details of this immigration deal. They came to the White House and said, "Look, here's what we have so far." Maybe Trump's going to push back on some of this, but the fact that there's so much controversy on just a phrase that kind of distracts from the legislative effort. It distracts from the progress that they seem to be making earlier in the week.
Jesse Burns from The Hill, thanks a lot. Busy week ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care. Much more on the DACA debate ahead on Fox News Sunday. California Attorney General Javier Becerra joins Chris Wallace to discuss immigration and how his state is responding. That's immediately following this fine program, America's News Headquarters, at 2 p.m. Eastern.
Officials now saying that at least 20 people have perished in devastating mudslides across California. Recovery crews in Montecito are using backhoes, jackhammers, and chainsaws this hour to clear mud, toppled trees, and even boulders from residential areas.
I think it's going to be tough for all of them. I know that they really want to open. My mom was telling me all those stories, and now they lose business every single day. I was thinking about this inn, right? It's now not functional. So, the longer the recovery takes, the harder it's going to be for them to bounce back.
So far, over 50 homes have been completely destroyed, while 460 have been damaged.
A Maine family has been reunited with their dog after she went missing in the midst of a frigid blizzard. Sophie, the 13-year-old yellow lab, followed her owners outside when they went to plow, but she didn't come home. 5 days later, a family member saw Sophie frozen in a snowbank.
Kept looking, then finally she popped her head up again. So I turned around and I said, "Sophie."
The family says Sophie lost about 5 pounds and is now safe, recovering at home. What a miracle. And as more cold temps hit the East Coast and much of the U.S., meteorologist Adam Klotz is standing by at the Fox Extreme Weather Center. Adam?
Hey there, Mike. Yeah, lots of folks out there dealing with that cold air here on this Sunday. You're looking at temperatures fairly far south, 27 degrees in Memphis, 39 degrees in New Orleans. Still lots of teens stretching across the Midwest and over along the East Coast, all below freezing. Now, it's in that freezing air where we're seeing some of the most weather across the country right now as far as winter weather, as we've seen a system move across portions of the Ozarks. This now running into Arkansas, stretching up into Missouri. Some pretty decent snowfall, especially for that far south. There are winter advisories in this area and will continue to be so as this system slowly drifts off towards the east, eventually moving towards Memphis, areas of Tennessee and Kentucky. But now as we head forward, the next big one, it's been cold, but it's about to get really cold. Once again, pay attention to this line. That's the front edge of a cold front. There's going to be snow all along it, but it's back behind it where things really begin to get frigid. This is a wind chill forecast, and before you know it, temperatures are dropping back down into the negatives, the negative 10 to 15 degree range. That's going to be happening on Monday and Tuesday. Your Monday high forecast, negative 10 degrees in Fargo. Unfortunately for Tuesday, that spreads out even farther. There's going to be folks all across the plains, Mike, waking up to some really cold temperatures here the next couple of days.
Yeah, I woke up to a local radio station saying it was -1 wind chill factor here in D.C., so great day to watch Fox News.
Yep.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Still ahead, Chelsea Manning wants to take on Washington, this time as a United States Senator. The controversial leaker and convicted felon announces her candidacy. Plus, President Trump points the finger at Democrats in Congress for failing on DACA and other big items on his agenda. Our Fair and Balanced political panel will weigh in coming up next.
I do not believe DACA is dead, but what I would say is, from my perspective, of course, as the Secretary of Homeland Security, it's not a DACA deal. It's a security immigration deal.
A fix for DACA. Here to weigh in on the next steps is our Fair and Balanced political panel of all ladies today, which is delightful. Contributor for The Hill and author of Government Gone Wild, Kristen Tate, and Democratic strategist Elizabeth Gore. So, Kristen, I want to go to you first. The president tweeting this morning about tax cuts, bonuses resulting from those tax cuts, and a massive stock market rally. I asked this question yesterday, but it really bears repeating. Why does he ever tweet about anything else?
Well, you know, it's great that he touts his victories. We want to see more of that because he's been such a strong president when it comes to the economy. But I think it's also important that he points out that he's trying to work with the Democrats on certain issues like DACA, but they are really the roadblock when it comes to the Dreamers and making sure that they are taken care of. You know, it really is up to the Democrats whether or not DACA is dead. Trump has repeatedly said that he's open to DACA. He's just not open to blanket amnesty that does not address the wish list that he and the White House have released, most importantly, funding for the border wall. So yeah, I think it's great that he touts his accomplishments. I want to see more of that, but he also needs to make sure that he addresses the real problems and holdups in Congress because, you know, the media isn't always fair and balanced. He's got to be his own media.
So, but Elizabeth, when we talk about even tweets touting his accomplishments aside, the sort of off-topic, unilateral, seemingly spur-of-the-moment tweets that the president really likes to do, doesn't he sometimes derail his own, not just his own messaging, but his own actual policy objectives? I'm thinking specifically of the tweet earlier this week on FISA that he tweeted out his opposition shortly before the Hill was set to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple things at play here. First of all, the president seems increasingly confused about what his own position is on various issues. And the FISA tweet is a great example. He sent out 2 contradictory positions in just a couple of hours. And in the DACA meeting with congressional leaders, he took 3 different positions in one single meeting. So it's hard to lead if you don't know where you're headed. And I think that the tweets just reflect his own confusion about exactly what it is that he's trying to accomplish. Kristen also mentioned that, you know, there's burden on the Democrats to get things done. The Republicans control the House, they control the Senate, they control the White House. It's hard to say that it's up to the Democrats to find solutions to problems and keep the government open. The Republicans are being led by a president that is taking a sort of a sideways path here, and it's just not clear to me that they have the agreement internally within the Republican Party to actually accomplish anything.
All right, so on the deal, take a listen to what Attorney General Xavier Becerra had to say to our own Chris Wallace earlier this morning. I want to get your reaction.
2 decades have gone by. Those individuals in this country have now established businesses. They have gone to schools here. They have families here. And to all of a sudden just jerk the rug from underneath them, I don't think it's the American way.
Now, so Becerra was referring explicitly to the 200,000 or so Salvadorans that the president is sending back to their country of origin. Kristen, what do you say to his comments?
I mean, look, if the Democrats want to protect these people, if they want to protect the Dreamers, they've got to work with Trump. The White House has been extremely clear from the beginning about what their wish list is for any DACA deal. It's, you know, the end of the diversity visa lottery, the end of chain migration, and funding for a border wall. And the deal that was proposed to Trump last week did not fully address all 3 of these items. Here's the bottom line for Trump. It would be political suicide for him to agree to any amnesty deal if all of his demands are not met. He ran on immigration and the border wall. That was his #1 issue. It is why he's in the White House today. And if he gives up on that wall, I think it'll be his George Bush, read my lips, no new taxes moment. His base will turn on him. How he deals with this issue has everything to do with whether or not he's reelected in 2020.
So that's interesting. Elizabeth, Kristen sort of separates out here, forget what you believe, your personal beliefs or political beliefs about what is the right solution here for Dreamers and for other people on temporary protected status in the United States. If the president reneges at all and cedes any ground on the border wall in this spending bill, it will amount to political suicide. Do you agree with that from a political optics perspective?
Listen, I think that the compromise that was put forward included border security. It included some funding for some fencing and some of the issues that Kristen just raised about trying to address some of these other problems. The president himself tweeted, "Our country needs a good shutdown to fix this mess. The president has expressed a number of times privately that he thinks that a shutdown is good for him politically. And so it makes it hard to see how he's going to be pushing to find a real compromise, to try and find solutions, when he himself has expressed interest in having a shutdown because he thinks that it motivates his base.
Hold
so
on,
I think
I
that's
have to
too bad.
respond to
And I
that.
think that, he has to be own up to what he's already said publicly.
All right, ladies, we've
Trump
got to
has
leave it
already
there.
said that.
Unfortunately, we've got to leave it there. But you both do a good job laying out the two sides of the coin on these really important issues. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Glad to be here.
Thanks, Jillian.
A former soldier who was convicted of leaking classified documents is now running for the U.S. Senate. Chelsea Manning, formerly known as Bradley Manning, filed her statement for candidacy in Maryland. Fox News correspondent Caroline Shively is here. Caroline?
Hey there, Mike. Chelsea Manning announced her Senate run this morning on social media, posting the upbeat tweet, "Yep, we're running for Senate," followed by a happy face, rainbow hearts, and the hashtag #WeGotThis. Her message on YouTube was a bit more ominous, talking about current political leaders.
We don't need them anymore. We can do better. You're damn right we got this.
Today, Manning is a transgender woman, writer, and now Democratic candidate. But in 2010, she was Army intelligence analyst Private Bradley Manning, who was caught giving WikiLeaks documents about the U.S. wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and prisoners in Guantanamo Bay. It was a shocker, the largest leak of classified documents in U.S. history. In 2013, Manning was convicted and sentenced to 35 years in prison. Then late last year, President Obama commuted Manning's sentence to the 7 years already served, and she was released from a military prison. She's challenging Democrat Ben Cardin, a two-term senator who is up for re-election in November. The two would meet in the Maryland Democratic primary this June. Cardin is thought of as an easy favorite for re-election, but someone with Manning's name recognition could bring heavy media coverage and outside money from the far left to the race. Manning is viewed as a patriotic whistleblower by some and a traitor by others for her leaks. And she hasn't shied away from controversy since her release from prison. Last week, Manning posted on Twitter, "Expletive the police" on Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Despite President Obama commuting her sentence, Manning is still a convicted felon, but that doesn't appear to bar her from running for Congress. Mike?
That's pretty stunning. I think there's a joke there about Congress, but I'll let it go. But running against an incumbent Democrat in Maryland, one would think he would have an easy time of it, but we'll see.
Yeah, lots of money coming in.
Caroline, thanks a lot.
Honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we speak to the civil rights leader's niece about his legacy and the urgent, important work that remains to be done on racial equality in America. Stick with us.
Well, I think we're making some significant strides in Atlanta and all over the South, at least massive resistance.
That was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. 56 years ago, speaking about the progress being made for African Americans throughout the country. But today, while African American unemployment has hit an all-time low, it's still higher than other groups in the U.S. And according to a recent poll, 56% of Americans say overall race relations in the U.S. are bad, and 44% of respondents say those relations are getting worse. Joining me now, Alveda King, Martin Luther King Jr.'s niece. It is great to see you today. How are we doing as a country right now?
We are coming along just fine. I'm 67 years old. I marched in the 1960s, was jailed for open housing. My dad, Reverend A.D. King, Martin Luther King Jr.'s brother, Uncle M.L., were my mentors during those days. Of course, Uncle M.L., Martin Luther King Jr., was considered to be an agitator, an outsider sometimes, and it reminds me of our leader, President Donald John Trump, now the President of the United States. He's often compared to an agitator, and he's been referred to as a bull in a china shop and all of that. But President Trump is causing us to have these conversations about race relations. If my uncle were here today, I believe he would remind us of that scripture he and my dad, A.D., liked, of one blood God made all people, so we are one human race. And Uncle M.L. said we must learn to live together as brothers, and I add as sisters, or perish as fools. I know President Trump is working on prison reform, getting some people out of prison back into the working market. So unemployment for blacks and for everybody is down, and then the hiring is coming up. We know with the tax cuts, some businesses are now saying we'll raise our own minimum wage, we'll give bonuses, and so all of that is working. And President Trump's answer to racism has always been the same. That's one of the things that convinced me to vote for him, along with his pro-life stance, the civil rights of the babies in the womb. They asked him, what about racism? He says, if you give people jobs, a good, fair place to live, a good place in society with dignity, then they will get along. We just want fairness like that.
Sure.
And I had a discussion today. People were saying that President Trump has called Haiti and Africa a bad word.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, he was referring to the corruption in those countries that needs to be fixed, where they actually are hellholes over there because of the stranglehold of corruption. As the leader of America, as we become great again, I believe our president is going to step into those corrupt places and drain some more swamps outside of America.
Well, the other day at the White House, ma'am, reporters were shouting at the 45th president, "Are you a racist?" at an event honoring the legacy of Dr. King. What's your reaction to that?
That was amazing to me that they were not acknowledging the new legislation that President Trump is signing right here in Georgia, with the Martin Luther King Historic Park now being a national park, the first named in honor of an African-American person. I'm glad it is my uncle. I believe that's well deserved. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to bring jobs and strength back into these communities. There'll be other kinds of historic sites and parks, something more being done for Emmett Till, I understand. So he's making America great again for everybody, including African Americans, women, babies in the womb, sick people, poor people, elderly people. He's doing that. And to not ask him one question about any of that and just to yell out, "Hey, Mr. Trump, are you a racist?" I mean, my goodness. Is anybody really paying attention to the good that is being done in this country by President Donald John Trump? And we give God the glory, not President Trump. I mean, he's a man, he's a human being. But we have to recognize that the country is getting better under the leadership of President Donald John Trump. He admires Martin Luther King Jr. I thank him for that. And his good friend, I don't want to say sidekick, that would be disrespectful for Secretary Carson. I don't want to call him a sidekick, but he is working with the president along with many others from every ethnic community, men, women, young people, millennials, and to just yell out, "Are you a racist?" I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable.
Alveda King, I'll tell you this, at our house we'll be spending some time with our 11 and 10-year-olds tomorrow talking about Dr. King, and so thank you for your time today, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks for the opportunity.
A literal cliffhanger in the country of Turkey. Coming up, what people are describing as a miracle truly looked like one. Also, how one former Navy captain at the helm of a nonprofit is now helping our nation's veterans to land on their feet when they take off their uniform for the last time.
We're not looking for special handouts. Just a bit of nudge in the right direction.
Give me a chance. Let me prove myself.
I cannot tell you how many times I heard this. Thank you for your service. That's always appreciated. It never gets old. It never gets old. Of course, a job's better.